Welcome to Podbreak Africa, the sweet and sour bits of passion, where we interview African podcasters sharing their experiences, including successes, challenges, and failures, providing knowledge for budding African creatives who have chosen the spark and want to invest in their passion.
Hi everyone, it's a beautiful evening right here in Nigeria, and yes, I can say welcome to today's edition of Podbreak, the first we're having for the year 2025. Hi Sean, nice to see you. I'm so excited right now.
Great to see you too.
Awesome, connecting Nigeria to South Africa, because Sean is right there in South Africa and right here I am in Nigeria. Wow. Okay. Real soon we'll be having a co-host join us, who is Richie. Richie also is here in Nigeria, even though he's from Ghana. So we're going 3 countries right here. And I can't wait to talk about this topic because it's something I'm really happy and interested to talk about. While we wait for just a few minutes to get the conversation started. For those watching right now, probably you're rewatching this because I'm sure it will be available for people to watch after now. I'll properly introduce this event and why we are here. So this is Podbreak. It is an initiative from APVA, that's the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists. And the idea is for us to have conversations bordering on audio creatives, particularly the voiceover artists. And then we have podcasters and also as it concerns spoken word artists, because these are the 3 major focus of APVA. We try to provide solutions to those creatives. And today we're going to be looking at a conversation that borders around makeshift studios. We want to learn how to create makeshift studios. I'm sure that everyone who is really in the audio industry must have had the need to create one sometime. Like practically right now, I'm not in my studio. The few times myself and Sean, when we've had video conversations, you would see what my studio looks like. So right now, I'm not in my studio, but I have to make a makeshift studio, right? I've not reached to my bag to get my microphone because I have a Shure MV7. But now it's just me. So if I wanted to create a makeshift studio in this room that I am hosted by my guest, I am hoping Sean can give me the guide into doing that. And I trust that he'll be doing so. Thank you for joining, Sean.
Thanks very much, T-Code. I'm not sure whether I should refer to you as Tolulupe or Tolu or T-Code. Which do you prefer for this evening's proceedings? Which hat are you wearing?
I'm wearing T-Code.
Love
T-Code.
it. Okay, great.
It's really easy to pronounce. Yeah. And how is it over there in South Africa?
Hey, I can't complain. Today was a little bit too warm for my liking, but I'm not going to complain. The sun is out. The skies are blue, and we like it. Things are invariably just a little bit easier to get through when the weather is good. So, no, things are fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds good. And I hope some of the time I come visiting, I can check in your studio. I see you've been doing a lot about podcasting lately. Kudos to you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. You're always welcome. Whenever you're here, please, and let me know a couple of days in advance so I can make sure everything's sparkly clean, right? I want to put out the best silverware and the best china and the best of everything when you're here. So
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm just gonna try to start since I am sure that my co-host will be joining us in a jiffy. So sure. Guys, welcome again to Podbreak Africa, and we're live. It's an initiative from the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists. Today we're going to be talking about how to build a makeshift studio, and I have with me our amazing guest. Before I talk about him, let me introduce myself again. My name is Tolulope Kolade. You can call me T-Code. I'm a voiceover artist here in Nigeria, and I do voiceovers across the world as well. I am a podcaster, and I'm the host of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, which is dedicated towards podcasters and voiceover artists in Nigeria, in Africa, helping everyone, navigate the craft. I also am the creative partner here at APVA. So it's always my pleasure to work with a team to serve African audio creatives. And speaking of serving African audio creatives, we thought of talking about something that is of concern to creatives across board. Either you're a voiceover artist or a podcaster or a spoken word artist, we all use the microphone. And there are times that we need to record in spaces that aren't really crafted for these purposes. They're not studio treated spaces. So you just have to improvise. And we thought it very important that we discuss this as we start the year 2025. And we brought to talk to us an amazing personality who has been in the field of audio, broadcast, podcasting, and even voiceover for decades now, and is still doing it very, very strong. We've had some time to talk in the past, and Sean Lewis is very, very knowledgeable when it comes to audio, the technical part of it. And as a matter of fact, there was a recently released book. You could call it a PDF, but it's still a book of resources to help address issues of budget studio or makeshift studio equipment that you can use. So no better person to talk to than Sean Lewis, who is reaching us all the way from South Africa. Sean, it's a pleasure to have you this evening.
Thank you, T-Code. I couldn't think of a better way to spend a Friday evening than to talk about podcasting. So thanks so much for having me. And I see Richie's joined us as well. So it's three's a crowd. We're here to make things happen.
Richie.
Hi, T-Code. Hi, Sean.
How's it, Richie?
Nice to see you.
It's great to be here. Sorry about the hiccup in joining.
No, it's all right.
Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
right. It's all right.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Sean. Nice to see you, T-Code. So
Nice to see you too.
I believe we are getting the ball rolling now. We're setting everything in motion. So ready to educate people, ready to
Yeah.
enlighten them about the Makeshift Studio. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then that's Richie. Richie is a contact center operations manager, a voiceover artist, a podcaster, and is also a social media and content manager. And he works with us at APVA. So it's nice to have the entire team here. And if you're streaming from wherever you are in the world, if you're joining this conversation, we'd like you to drop something in the chat. I believe LinkedIn allows for that, so you can let us know where you're listening from, and we'll be happy to take your questions at some point. So just stick around. When we get there, we'll let you know. All right. So let's get into the conversation. And I would start by asking a couple of questions to Sean Witz, who is a podcaster. By the way, Sean, your LinkedIn says you build podcasts that resonate and become people's favorites, and I consider that to be very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I really spend a lot of time with podcasters and trying to get them to think about the purpose of their shows and then building a premise around that. I think there's a lot of value in really thinking through very carefully about what you're offering the audience, and just some things there. I often talk about, putting the audience over your own ego. What are they getting from this? They're giving you their time to listen to what you put together. So are you reciprocating that with value to make it worth their while to listen from an educational perspective, from an information perspective? And it's great for us to be able to discuss things like makeshift studios, because so often we feel that if we don't have the best of equipment or the best of everything, our podcast can't be the best. But there's a rhetoric that I really enjoy about being someone's favorite. And you can create a project, a product, a podcast, a voice-driven project that is somebody's favorite, that really resonates with them, and they want to share it with other people. Isn't that a great way to be able to grow your project almost organically, because your listeners, your audience become your ambassadors? So if we can create podcasts that resonate, that's going to turn them into you into their favorites. and that's where I come alive. I really enjoy doing that.
Oh, awesome. That's interesting. And now I'm so curious to know how this interest came to be, because I know you've been doing this for many years now, not just
Yep.
even podcasting. You started with broadcasting and
Yep.
you've also done voiceovers. So how, like, what brought you into the zone of audio, this audio territory? And you said, I'm just going to take an interest in this. Because I also know not everybody who is in the broadcast field has
Yep.
that kind of passion for
Sure.
audio. Some people just want
Yep.
to talk, but
Yep.
you, I, and a couple of people find it very interesting to know the kind of mics, the inputs, the outputs, and all of that. So, give
Yeah.
us a
Yeah. Yeah.
background story.
I think for me, and you're quite right, there's a definite strong interest in audio. For me, I err towards the storytelling side and what the production sounds like. As far as a technical equipment-based sound, like my technical knowledge on the condenser mics versus dynamic mics, or the inputs and the outputs, or the gain levels, and that I've got a basic knowledge there. Like I can hold my own. But there are guys that are really into that as audio engineers, and I like crafting a project that sounds really good. So I might need to lean on them to get the project to where it needs to be. For me, it's really about telling a story that's emotive. So if I'm doing an interview, how can I elevate the interview, and what do I do to make the interview that much more emotive? And I can do that by using music. I can do that by using pauses. I can do that by using intonations in my voice, or speeding my voice up, or speaking slightly slower. And that stuff, that craft, that science, that mix of art, that really intrigues me. And you're right. I started working in radio. I've done a fair number of voiceovers, and I suppose the exposure to the audio engineers and seeing how they do what they do, and how that paired with my interests creates something that people enjoy listening to. And through that, of course, then it comes to building studios, right? So I run a space in Cape Town. It's not a studio in terms of all of the soundproofing, and it's not geared the same way. We've done the best we possibly can in terms of treating the space, making sure that the equipment there is as good as we can possibly get it to be, and getting people to be able to use that and learn how to use their voice in the space and record their audio as best as possible. So yeah, creating a space that's creating that environment that allows for you to create great sounding stuff. That's where, yeah, that's where we're talking about tonight, right? That's Makeshift Studios on a budget. How can we make the best of the situation that we're in?
Okay,
Awesome.
thank,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, go
Thank you
on,
very,
Richie.
thank you very much, Sean. Thank you very much, Tikot, as well. That was a great question and a great answer from Sean. But I want us to backtrack a little bit. Sean, I want you to give us a history, because the audio space is a very creative space. It's a space where I feel personally you need to have passion for it.
Mm.
So basically, I want you to run us through, because I know so many of our viewers here will be looking into. Most of them will have gone online to search on you. Who is Sean Lutz?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from from your portfolio, we can see, oh yeah, Sean Lutz, you are a podcast coach, you are a
Hmm.
consultant. So
Hmm.
having this track record, it shows that this person is really knows his onions, and he really, really has passion for the audio space. So I want you to backdate and tell us, when did you come into realization that, oh, this is a venture I feel I need to explore more. This is a space I feel I need to explore more, have more knowledge about it, and actually help people grow in the audio creative space.
Okay, thanks, Richie. Well, I suppose if I delve into my own history, I worked on radio for a commercial radio station in Cape Town for a very long time. And around 2015, I was hosting an afternoon drive show. You know how those go: fast paced, multiple interviews, lots of things happening, giveaways, traffic, news, lots of dynamic things happening in those 3 or 4 hours that you've got people's attention. So, through the years that I spent doing that, I understood how to craft a show that holds people's attention and keeps them entertained while they're stuck in traffic. Cape Town, one of the worst cities as far as traffic is concerned, now that we're into 2024. Fortunately, this was nearly 10 years ago, so the traffic was still there. Nonetheless, through that, you start to learn what it is that people gravitate towards, what they're enjoying, what they're not enjoying, how to get them through, right? So that content development space was very much formed and formulating and developing, through that. My radio journey started at a university. Even beyond that, I was coaching swimming, and I took a sabbatical from that, and I went and did a voiceover training course in the USA. That's why there's still this weird accent that sits with me. And so I did my very first demo in a New York studio, and I thought I was the bee's knees. I really did. I had somebody sitting in the control booth giving me directions, teaching me how to use my voice, and they're speaking to me through headphones just like this, right? So I'm standing in a studio, in a booth, speaking directly into the microphone, taking instructions. But when I came back to South Africa and I received my demo, once it was sent, right, via the post, because that's how old I am, on a CD, right, not MP3s on the internet like we do today. When I listened back to it, I was like, now that I'm back in South Africa and I'm surrounded by South African voices, I can hear this demo sounds like I'm trying too hard. Sounded like I was trying to be an American. But I know when I was in the studio receiving direction, I was iterating, I was copying and replicating, I was mimicking what I was told to do. So I was very embarrassed to try and go and get a job as a voiceover artist when this was my demo. Nonetheless, I tried. And the only place that I really found that was interested in me, thank heavens, my sister was at university at the time. She noted that the university radio station was doing an intake. I was much older and I wasn't at university, but I figured if I can be in the sphere of people that are doing things with their voices, maybe I'll get an opportunity to voice a documentary. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to voice a documentary. I wanted to be like David Attenborough and really take you through the forest or underwater and create a world using my voice. That or an animated character. And I haven't achieved either of those. So maybe if the things maybe you can contact me with somebody still there. But that's how it started. That's what I wanted to do. That's where I was hoping to take my voice. And coincidentally, I don't know whether it was just being older, a little bit wiser, at the university radio station called MFM 92.6, based at Stellenbosch University. I climbed the ranks there very quickly. I was very quickly hosting an afternoon drive show. I was very quickly into being a permanent feature on their daytime slots. And that just escalated to the point where the commercial radio station said, hey, we want you. And there again, things moved very quickly. So I felt like I was in the right space. Clearly, my voice was resonating with people. Clearly, I was good at doing something. And I still felt like I was building the plane as we were flying it. I was still figuring it out, which meant I was thirsty for the knowledge. I was constantly asking questions. I was constantly watching how other people were doing things. And that was everything from an audio engineer, how they structured a jingle that played out to the radio, or a producer and answering calls and dealing with people on the other side, an audience member, to hosting a show and managing 4 other people. I was constantly trying to learn as much as I could, however long I could. I felt that I was behind, right? I felt like I had only found this very late in my life. I was about 27, 28, 29, and I felt like I'd already missed the boat because I was so late into it. So I think to try and answer your question, Richie, I think based on the fact that I was trying to do as much catch up as possible, I've just applied that throughout everything. And I'm constantly trying to learn now. I feel like I'm the stupidest person in the room, if that makes sense. I'm trying to surround myself with people that know more so that I can learn and speed up my learning and then implement it. So from radio, just to try and fast track now again, radio around 2015, I started feeling like my interview slots were just too short, because radio is a medium that wants you to keep moving. And again, drive time radio, a slot needs to do this, then the next slot you need to be doing something else, constantly moving the show along. And I just felt that I wanted to tell longer stories. I wanted to get to know my guests that much better. I felt that there was a wealth of information that they weren't getting a chance to share because we were on a short form platform. And that's where my interest for podcast came about. I bought my own equipment, which stood in my house for a little over 2 or 3 years before I actually started using it. But in that time, I tried to train myself how to. The various platforms came about. And you'll know, lockdown came around and we were all stuck with what do we do with our time? It was a great time to launch a podcast. And from there, it's just escalated. It's me trying to share my knowledge with people so that they also can learn faster and catch up along the way. So the coaching and the consultation has come through because I've managed other people's podcasts. I've created my own podcast. And I've had radio colleagues come to me now and they go, how did you do that? Or they've seen stuff I did on Instagram and go, where did you learn that? And I suppose it's just this innate trying to learn as much as I possibly can and then share what I've learned to the best of my ability. I still think there are people that are a lot smarter than me, but somehow I keep being invited back to rooms like this to share. So here I am.
Oh yeah, like man, that deserves a round of applause. Thank you so much, John. You may not know it, but you're an inspiration to many. I'll tell you a
Thank
secret,
you.
right? I recall last year I was trying to create my website, and I browsed through a lot of people. And when I got to your website, and I was like, nah, this is it. This is what I'm
Oh,
talking
wow.
about. Like it has everything I really want to put on my website: the consultation, the podcasting, because we have a lot in common, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then yeah, listening to your story, I see where all of those came from, and it's quite impressive. Years of hard work, learning, and consistency. And you said something about wanting to share this knowledge with people, and we're so grateful at APVA that you agreed and we collaborated to put together, APVA and you, a book that addresses equipment and studios and all of that. So let's talk about a makeshift studio. Let's go
Mhm.
straight into it. How do one, or how do you create a makeshift studio? What are the things to consider? Let's start with the things to consider, and then we talk about the devices themselves.
Sure. I think maybe a good place to start as well, Tolu, Two Code, got three names, T Code,
It's
T
all
Code,
right.
T Code. I think maybe something that's also interesting to note is what sound is and how a sound wave works, right? I often find myself
Yeah.
trying to say to someone, well, the reason there's an echo is because the sound wave is bouncing off something. And somebody goes, what do you mean? So I guess as a fundamental, sound waves, sound travels in waves, like these elongated waves. And if I think about, again, our radio again, an AM frequency is a long, slow wave with peaks and valleys or hills and valleys, whereas an FM frequency is very short and sharp, so a lot more peaks and drops. So that's from a radio perspective, the sound waves and the frequencies that we're talking about. But in the same way, a sound wave then travels through air and it travels through water and it can travel through solids. That's why we can still hear something under the water, or we can hear something through a wall, right? The sound waves can travel through stuff like that. And until that sound wave has bounced off enough surfaces that its energy is no longer there keeping it alive, that's when it starts to fade away, right? So an echo through a channel of mountains or a canyon is constantly bouncing off sides until it's got no more energy and it's completely dissipated, right? So very simple layman's explanation of sound waves. So when it comes to looking at a makeshift studio and you go, okay, well, the space that I'm in, where am I situated and what am I talking at? What am I talking through? What am I talking towards? And very often we just go, well, I'm talking into the microphone, so that's where the sound's going. But we're not in a vacuum. So my voice isn't only going into the microphone. My voice is going over the microphone, around the microphone, below the microphone. That's why technically, like from mic technique, we want to be relatively close to the microphone. Depending on the microphone, and audio technical wizards with equipment will tell you other things as well. But invariably, you want to be close to your microphone when you speak. But those other sound waves that go beyond that are going to bounce off of a wall. And we want something to absorb that sound wave or at least slow it down. So as crazy as this sounds, because people don't like to admit that you get really great audio quality, great recordings, great sounding audio, if you were to sit inside a clothing cupboard surrounded by soft clothes, you're going to sound fantastic because all of that audio wave is now bouncing into and being absorbed by soft things. So again, very simply, if I had to sit here right now and cover myself with a really heavy blanket or a very heavy, dense duvet blanket thing, all of that sound is going to be contained and it's not going to bounce off of something because it hasn't had far to travel. So I think it's important just to understand that the sound waves are what we're trying to mitigate in some way, shape, or form. And soundproofing, which is another thing somebody says to me, is this room soundproof? And I have to say to them, no, it's not soundproof. Soundproofing, if we haven't designed that in from the very beginning when we built the room, it's really difficult to make a space soundproof, right? There's going to be sound that gets in, bleeds in, or bleeds out. The best we can do then to a room that hasn't been built with that specific purpose in mind is to treat it with acoustic elements in some way, shape, or form. So the room I'm sitting in right now, as an example, has got a cement ceiling, a cement floor, and cement walls. And I've been fortunate enough to put panels up on the walls that are now going to slow those sound waves down. So when I speak, a lot of the sound here is absorbed. Sorry, it goes through the panels, bounces off the wall, and then comes back through the panels. So all of a sudden, those sound waves have been slowed down so much that the energy has almost dissipated by the time it comes back to the microphone, right? So if we're creating a makeshift studio, essentially what we want to do is we want to fill the space with as much soft stuff as we possibly can and be strategic in terms of the direction that we're going to speak in. Now, if I'm going to put myself in the corner of the room and speak into the corner, I've got two hard surfaces that my voice is going to bounce off of. That's not the best way to do it, is it? There's going to be a different way for me to structure that room or place myself in said room. So building a makeshift studio really means using what you have and doing what you can as easily as possible without, again, in a budget. We don't want to break the bank. What have you got? How can we make this work as best as we possibly can to get that audio quality that everybody loves, that crispy, warm sound? And that's what we're looking for.
I'm going to let Richie ask the next question, but I want to ask this question, which is about the devices now, because thank you so much for explaining to us how much importance and impact sounds make, because that's the foundation.
Sure.
Now, if you get the sound right, of which in the case of building a makeshift studio, the idea is even the fact that you're not in a studio space, but you want to transform the space into a studio space. How about the mic, the equipment rather? So can you speak to the idea of a makeshift? So I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I'm not prepared for an audition, but I traveled to somewhere and this client reaches out and says, I'd like you to submit an audition, and I'm a voiceover artist and my equipment isn't here. Give me a practical, scenario, and how do I solve this issue? I'd like to hear that.
I'd love to hear what you would do, but I'm going to try. First, I would panic because I know the quality I would normally send would sound very different. And now I'm like, it's not going to sound the same, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I would probably do, because there are options to you. What do you have with you? Have you got a laptop with you or a cell phone? Now, let's not kid ourselves. The microphones on these mobile devices are very good, right? I mean, we communicate on them all the time. We'll send messages back and forth. So can we create a really great environment then to just use this microphone so that your audio quality that you have to send a demo through or an audition through is as good as it can possibly get? So let's say you do have to use your cell phone then to go. You have to use a cell phone to record. Now, technically, or from a technique perspective, you need to get your mouth just far enough away so if you're not going to distort the audio, right? And hopefully, if you're doing some spoken word practices, if you are a voiceover artist, or if you are podcasting, or if you're a spoken word artist and you're doing poetry, by now you would probably know how far your mouth needs to be from the microphone. And as a general rule of thumb, we would say about a fist, maybe a little bit further, depending on how strong and how powerful your voice is. Whether you're going to be using plosives and you're using lots of P's and D's, and there's a lot of fast air moving through your mouth, moving through your teeth, that's going to cause that distortion on the microphone. So knowing your equipment well helps, right? So if you're out on the field and you're only got your cell phone, you're not going to speak really close to it because that's going to distort the sound. So one, placement. And then two, do we have a bedroom? Do we have a lounge maybe? Do we have a space that we can speak potentially into a couch, like into soft furnishings, or on a bed, but into the pillows, right? So placing the microphone between the pillows, so I'm speaking in the direction of where the pillows are in the microphone. That sound is being then absorbed and dissipated. It's not getting a chance to bounce off of walls. Is this helping? Am I kind of answering your question? Richie, have I gone completely off track? Are you following?
We're following you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm literally in that situation right now.
Are you?
Yeah. Well, it's not like I have an audition to submit, but anything can happen any time. So I am hoping that I get enough cues from you. I traveled and I just have a mic in my bag, and that's all. So whatever you say is going to save my life this weekend.
I mean, you're already traveling with a microphone, right? So you're already one step up. You plug in a microphone, but then in the environment, right? So that
Yeah,
room that you're in, maybe not speaking towards the wall, speaking away from the wall, but then making
yeah,
sure that whatever's in front of you, and you would know if you're based in a studio, maybe there are foam panels up in the studio that you've created. You want to be able to slow those sound waves down. That's really what we're doing.
yeah,
You know this. We know
yeah.
this. We're just trying to reiterate that's essentially what we're trying to do. So you could do it with thick curtains. You can do it with heavy blankets. You can do it with cushions and pillows. You can make sure that there's a thick carpet on the floor. Or so essentially, don't choose to record in the bathroom or a kitchen where there's lots of tiles and hard surfaces. Choose as far as possible to record in an environment where there's lots of soft furnishings. That's the bottom line, really.
All right. I have a question which I'll ask later, as a voiceover artist or podcaster, but I know Richie has a question as well. So Richie, over to you now.
Yes, thank you very much, T Code. So, Sean, I have a question off the top of my head. I'm wondering, when we say
Yes.
makeshift studio and we say a home studio,
Mhm.
are the two similar in any way?
They can be. I think maybe if we say a makeshift studio is like T Code is saying, I'm traveling and I need to do something, right? I'm in an environment that isn't normally my environment and I've got an opportunity to record something. Or makeshift could very well be my home, but I can't leave it like that, right? I don't have the space that I can dedicate to a room that's going to be set up like this every time. In other words, I can put the things in place, but then I have to pack them away because it's going to be, where I work or my dining room or my living room the next afternoon, right? I can't leave it like that. A home studio, much the same, can very well be something that you've created yourself. My distinction then, if I had a home studio like this room, it's always like this. It lives like this. Its purpose is set up so that I can record in here. Makeshift for me is something that we can put up and take down and pack away again. So that would be my distinction between the two, but they are very similar, I suppose. But if we take it into the context, maybe Richie, if you think of an office space and you want to record an interview with somebody at an office, there isn't the space that's going to be dedicated to recording. We could just make it work for the time being and then pack everything away again. Yeah.
Okay, so for the viewers watching, home studio is a studio where, based on what Sean has said, it's a studio whereby you have it dedicated for that reason. Whilst the makeshift is, you can easily take it down just for a short while, use it to do whatever you want to do, and it's done. So those are the two distinct differences between a home studio and a makeshift studio. Which brings me to my question, because from when we started this conversation, we've been talking about experience. Experience is something that you've spoken about a lot. So based on your experience, I believe you've had instances where you had your own makeshift studio
Mm.
just to run around, do something. I believe so. Am I right? Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
based on experience. So, what would you say was one of the mistakes you did when you were initially setting up your own makeshift studio, based on
Um,
experience?
Yeah, so the one I'm thinking of that I eventually landed on was literally speaking into a clothing cupboard. We had relocated. I was stuck in a house that wasn't mine, and most of the things there I didn't know. And it was a very like minimalist house, hard surfaces, hard everything. And the only space I could find was a cupboard. So I opened both doors and I just put blankets inside the cupboard and I sat on the floor with my laptop in front of me. And I now can't remember even if I had a microphone or if I was speaking into the laptop microphone, but that was the best I could possibly do considering the environment and the equipment that I had at hand, right? So a microphone that's built into a laptop excuse me, is built for a certain purpose, right? It's built for us to be able to speak to somebody quickly in a conferencey type environment. It's not designed for you to capture really great audio that you can, broadcast out. So I honestly, I can't remember if I had a microphone plugged into that computer or not, but that's what I went with. And I think I still have a photograph of myself somewhere sitting on the floor, speaking into a cupboard and trying to put as many soft things around me, behind me and in front of me. It worked because nobody knew I had done that, right? Nobody could tell me, nobody listened and said, Sean, were you sitting on the floor speaking into a cupboard this? Because nobody could tell. So that for me was an absolute win. In terms of what went wrong, I think it was the amount of time I took to finally make that decision, right? Trying to figure something out, and then eventually realizing that the most, um, the most, the thing that I could actually execute, right, with what I had around me was using exactly what I had. I had a cupboard, there's clothes already hanging in it. Just go with that. I didn't have to. I mean, I had spent far too much time trying to figure out how I was going to do the recording in my head. You know how that happens, right? Somebody says to you, "I need a particular file at a certain time," and I'm already going, "But I can't be in my studio, and I don't have the things that I would normally have, and I feel like a duck out of water because I'm not in my environment." So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it was going to be, and eventually, that's the thing that came to mind. Now I know for next time. That's my go-to.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was that was really kind. I mean, also sharing your experience. And I still have the question I want to ask, but I
Okay,
just want to follow up with Richie's question about the makeshift versus the home studio.
sure.
Um, I want to I want you to emphasize why it isn't. I mean, when we say something is makeshift,
Hmm.
that means it's not the ideal. It's just, something we use to, just for the meantime, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so I want you to emphasize the reason why it's important for us to understand makeshift is makeshift. You can't make makeshift your main studio. Why am I saying this? Is if you go ahead to give us, solutions to makeshift studios, like I've seen some people also have done a research and they figured this out. They tend to make the makeshift the studio,
Okay,
which as a professional isn't the case.
right.
You need to like advance.
Sure.
So talk about this quickly, and then I'll ask the question because the question is bordering really about mics to use in certain situations. So
Okay.
what's your thoughts on what I shared?
Yeah, okay. I think like for me, makeshift means, something that is useful and we have it on hand, right? And we've created it and we've done so on a budget and we've used our resources that we have. And I think it's important for us as creators to realize, again, like I said at the top of our conversation, we don't have to go out and spend loads of money. That doesn't necessarily going to mean we're going to get great audio quality. Which we will because we've spent a lot of money. But if you don't know how to use that, then you're also wasting your money, right? And there's something about being able to start in a particular spot, and you've created something to work with for you, right? I'm just remembering now again around lockdown time. I had a room that I had put mattresses up on the wall. So we had a room and we had to work at the same time. So all of a sudden, I flipped the beds and put them up against the wall, and I was like, actually, this works really well because now there's this soft cushioning. So it was lovely. The room felt warm and cozy and comfortable. There's something about studios as well for me when that acoustic dampening happens and you step in and there isn't any of that reverb. So it felt like a really cozy space. So that's another thing you could do. Just pop up mattresses, flip them up on the walls. They're not lying flat on the floor anymore. So for me, a makeshift studio is something that you create because you're in a predicament that you need to do that. You need to make a plan. So makeshift, or you don't have the finances yet to be able to do something that's properly established that you can leave in a particular place, right? So I don't think there's a wrong thing. I think makeshift is for time and place. We're here now. We can make it happen. The important part is that the story needs to be captured, or that the content needs to be captured in a way that other people can listen to it easily. It's really difficult for an audience member to follow a story, for them to understand your message if the quality of the audio is poor, right? So if it's distorted, if you sound like you're on the other side of the room and I as an audience member have to strain my ears to hear you, that means your message isn't getting to them, and that message is going to be what changes their lives. That message is going to empower them to make another decision. So it's important that the audio quality be really good. So again, makeshift meaning something that's useful, that you have on hand, that you don't have to spend lots of money to create, and you can get the thing moving, you can get the project going. There are plenty television and movie projects that, they make do with what they've got to get the story out there. There's that famous story around, was it the Blair Witch Project, that was shot really close up on really small cameras? That's years ago, giving my age away again. But then there is something about moving up, right? In the sense that things feel a little bit more solidified, slightly more professional. You're taking yourself maybe a bit more seriously. And that then I think starts to play in with the psychology of the creator, right? If we're constantly working out of I'm trying really hard not to put this as a negative, but if we're working from the point where I'm only as good as like thrift and put together, I might not treat myself with the respect of the value that my product really is. So there's something about stepping into a space that might feel a bit more professional, that might feel a little bit more put together. And with that comes a heightened sense of confidence, right? The first time, T-Code, you stepped into a studio that was set up in such a way where there was a booth separating you from an audio engineer, you're like, wow, this feels like a big deal, right? There's something about getting to that and pushing yourself to get to that level that elevates your craft as well. So there's nothing wrong with makeshift. It's not better or worse than a home studio or a professional studio. I think there times and places where makeshift is necessary to get it done. And if the opportunity arises for you to work in a studio that is set up with acoustic treatments, and they've done their level best to make it as dampen the audio as best as possible, the acoustics as best as possible, it feels really great to be in those spaces. So yeah, when we're working with a budget, but we've got good stories to tell, let's make it makeshift. We can get it out there.
Thank you, Sean. That was really on point. And I'll let Richie ask the. Okay, I have a question, Richie. Before you ask
Go
your
ahead,
question,
no problem. We're here.
just before I drop that question, I just want to let everybody know that there's an ebook written by Sean, and in the book it discussed this properly, how to build a makeshift studio for audio creatives. So you can visit our website to have a copy of the book. All right. So this is the question I have for you, Sean, because of course, not everybody listening is a beginner. Like different, levels to this. As a voiceover artist, we would normally recommend condenser microphones. But being a podcaster, personally, I prefer and I recommend dynamic microphones because they're literally dynamic. In the case of traveling and being a voiceover artist, and you need to produce, you need to like work, what's your best recommendation to get something close to good enough, if you understand?
Yeah, I think again, like you say, we're dealing with maybe a range of people that are listening that have different budgets. It's the worst answer, and I say this all the time. I have to go, it depends. It's never the answer anybody wants, because they want a definitive, go and buy this one and spend X amount of money, and then you're going to have it great. I've got friends that spent less than 800 Rand, and I'm not sure how we can equate that to all of the different currencies, but on 2 microphones, and they're very directional, and he gets great quality from that because he's learned how to use them, right? He knows the environment that he's in, he knows what quality he can get from them, and they've done really great jobs for them. In the studio that I manage, the microphones are upwards of thousands of rands. So they've come with brand names. They're really calibrated to the space that we're in, and to the users, making sure that we get the best audio from them as possible. Now, can I tell you which one is better? I can tell you that Google is going to tell me the one that's in my studio is a better microphone. It's also hellishly expensive. Is it necessary for you to carry around a microphone like that to get great audio? I don't believe so. I think if you've got your equipment and you're looking after it, there's a lot you can do with it. And I would really urge, and I always do, I say to guys, we need to work within our capacity. We need to work within our resources, and establish a workflow that's going to suit you, so that there's a sustainable way of doing this. Once it's gotten to the point where you can add to that, whether that be adding finances, add another level, then by all means upgrade things. And it feels nice to be able to upgrade things. But don't ever think that because your microphone isn't as expensive as somebody else's, that the quality that you're getting from it isn't going to be as good. It really is about technique and understanding how to use your microphones. But if you're going to push me for an answer, there are some really great USB type microphones on the market. And I could mention brands, but that doesn't really matter. You know, if you're traveling with a laptop and you've got a USB microphone, you can plug it in and you can get great audio quality from those. Don't rely on the laptop's microphone. That I can tell you now is not going to be nearly as good as your cell phone's microphone or a USB microphone. And again, because there's a spectrum, we'll see on the internet, some people love a particular microphone. You know, it's their favorite. They love this. However, somebody else can't stand the brand. So again, like, it's about being able to use what you have to the best of your ability and getting the best out of that piece of equipment. Sometimes it means that the cable that's connected, if you're using an XLR, right? So a plug-in microphone, obviously the difference, a USB with the USB port and then the XLRs. Sometimes the cabling on the XLRs can get damaged, and now your microphone is sounding horrible and you think it's the microphone's fault, but it could be a cable that needs to be replaced. So understanding the equipment is probably the best place to start before you start spending loads of money. I don't know if that's if the answer you were looking for, T-Code. Maybe you were asking me which one you should go and buy, but I'm pleading the fifth there.
But I really enjoyed the answer because it's not restricting or limiting. It serves, generally
Yeah, it cuts
people to
across.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to understand again that we can create really good audio if we understand how to use what we have. And we shouldn't always be chasing for the most expensive thing. Um, yes, from a marketing perspective, they're telling us that we need the flashiest, latest, brand newest, most expensive thing. But do we really, or are we just chasing that consumerism? So yeah, there's definitely times to level up. There are times to explore that, but please don't go and break the bank thinking if you have an expensive microphone, it's going to solve all your problems. Is your content good? Are you telling great stories, right? Is your scripting on point? Are all of those things, those are as important as your microphone is. So yeah, I think I've made my point there.
Right. Thank you very much, Sean. That was an awesome answer to that question.
Thanks, Richie.
So I'm going to be as plain as possible because I'm coming from the angle of a novice, someone that does not have too much experience in the audio creative space. I'm not saying I don't have the experience, but I'm just coming from that angle so people can actually learn. So, as an indie podcaster and voiceover artist, I've personally been there. I've done so many things, like as you've explained, stuck, putting yourself in a cupboard somewhere with
Yeah.
clothes all over, sweating, and you could agree
Yes.
with me that this it actually affects your output. What you can actually do is kind of limited because you are in a makeshift environment.
Mhm.
You are not in a standard, so to say, studio to record what you're doing. But over time, with the advent of AI and technology, there are some tools that came out that it could actually help you to an extent to treat your voice kind of, because if you don't have the necessary, maybe the acoustics, your soundproofing and whatnot, there are
Mhm.
some tools that came up that helped that's people that actually learned how to do it, because that's why I speak to most audio creatives that as an audio creative, you need to broaden your knowledge base. You
Mm.
need to use technology to your advantage. Don't think because there's been this controversy on the matter of AI that okay, AI is going to take some people's jobs, AI is going to do this, but I'm of the opinion that AI is actually a plus for you if you know how to use it. So I want to ask Sean, as an industry expert, would you say the usage of AI and some of these tools is kind of making us look like mediocres, or would you say it's a plus to people in that find themselves in the audio creative space? Does it make you look maybe seem artificial, or does it make people lazy? Yeah.
Good question. I think AI is obviously very topical. And again, I'm going to use that. How are we using it and where are we using it? If you're referring to things like plugins or being able to affect the sound and the acoustic, maybe there are certain AI tools that can remove background sounds, as an example, so that you're just having the voice the front and center. And depending on which ones you're using and how you're using them, it can affect your voice in such a way that you sound like a bit of a robot, and it takes the soul out of your voice. I've seen products that have done exactly that, where we've run them through an AI voice enhancer, or however they've named their product. And if you listen to the entire episode where a host has laughed or made a joke, AI has removed that, and they almost sound like they're cackling now. So now, as a listener, not understanding what's going on, I'm a bit shocked by what this host is doing, because it doesn't make sense to me. And then on the flip side, so that would be audio treating, right, using AI. On the other side, I think podcasters are of the industry that has very much accepted AI because it helps them brainstorm and write things. And it's done some of that work for them that maybe feels quite laborious and slow. There is a
Right.
danger for me in asking ChatGPT, since it's the sort of ubiquitous and everybody knows what that one is and how it works, that so many of us rely on ChatGPT for our show notes, that our show notes all start to sound the same. If we compare Richie's show notes to Sean's show notes to T-Code's show notes, they're all talking about uncovering, unlocking, and navigating and journeys. And there's a particular way that these large language models have been trained to use certain pieces of language. Then again, we're losing that humanness. So I think AI has helped audio creatives quite a lot, and in various ways. Again, going back to what I was saying in terms of how to use your microphone, how do we use the AI? Which tools are actually benefiting you, and which are putting almost another wall between you and your audience? We don't want there to be more of a distance. Audio is such an intimate medium. I mean, you're wearing headphones, I'm wearing headphones, and T-Code's forgotten half of his equipment in the other room. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you see what I'm saying, right? We're right here, which means my voice is going directly into your ears. You can't get closer than that. So don't remove that by using the AI tools. Use them to enhance, use them maybe to speed up your workflow, use them maybe as ways to bounce off ideas and brainstorm things. But don't just rely on them to do the heavy lifting, right? That's part of the creative journey, I'm afraid. That's part of that creative thing. We're almost tasked as part of our art to go out there and create something that people haven't seen or heard before in a way that we see the world. And if we're just handing that over to a machine, and the machine's doing it for all the other artists, our art isn't unique anymore. It's not our perspective. It's being squashed and changed by an AI. So there are definitely positives, but be careful when using it that it doesn't take the soul out of the work that you're creating, is my feeling. I don't know how you feel, Richie.
100%. I feel yeah, because that's the danger I see, because you need to have an understanding, which is why this setup, this pod break, powered by APVA, by the way, is very very essential for people, audio creatives, to understand, so they don't just go out there and jump on the trend because AI is trending. Let's just use
Mm,
it. So
mm.
I feel it's a very very valid point that you have
Yeah.
established. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, sorry, also to follow on there, they're great tools that help you, as far as podcasting is concerned, create timestamps, right? Which are becoming a little bit more easier now when people want to navigate through an episode. And now I don't have to sit with a marker and write down at 2 minutes of this, Sean said that, and Richie said this. The AI can do that for me. Great. That speeds up my process. It might be able to spit out an idea for a LinkedIn post or give me a suggestion on how I should write a newsletter, but it can't do what I can do the way I can do it. So by all means, using that as a guide or as a thinking partner. And again, depending on the tools that you're using, right? I'm talking like Pod Squeeze or of the Riverside stuff or of the, what are the other ones? Adobe's got a voice enhancer. Like there are various tools. Some are very brash, and others allow for you to sort of use them, paint with them a little bit softer, creating video clips from everything from Opus to Cast Magic. I mean, there's so many tools. Yeah, learning to use them to your benefit is worthwhile.
Oh wow.
Okay. Okay, Tico, do you have a question to ask us? I wanted to a follow-up question.
Okay, go on, Richie. And I was just going to say we're coming to the end of the meeting, but then yeah, please, we can
Oh,
take one more question.
I don't want to go. I'm
It's been
enjoying this.
insightful,
So
truly.
basically, from everything we've said, the name implies audio creative. So everything has
Mm.
to do with audio, listening, sound. So for someone planning to have a makeshift studio with a tight budget is
Mm-hmm.
very tight. What are some DIYs, like some things in the house that you can actually use for this soundproofing to actually help the sound? What
Okay.
can you what are some of the things that are laying down around in your house that you can easily use? Because in this part of the world, with the economy and everything, people are
Yeah.
really having. So we need to help
Resources are
people.
limited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
limited
Yeah.
resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So first, download the book off the website. The ebook does give you all sorts of bits and pieces. So as a note, but I'll list some of the things that are in there as well. Think about sealing any of the gaps. If you can do that, even if it means taking a towel and rolling it up and putting it at the bottom of a door. So if you're in a room and there's an air gap at the bottom of the door, maybe you roll up a towel and try and block that a little bit. If you've got curtains, how heavy are the curtains? Could we add another towel to that potentially to make that a little bit more cushiony? Have we got rugs or carpets that we can put on the floor underneath you? Or choose a room. This is always a good idea. Choose the room that you have available that's got the most soft furnishings in it, right? So you don't have to move everything around. Put yourself in that space. And then if there are additional things you can add, um, like like towels or rugs or curtains or cushions. Maybe you can bring the duvet into the lounge where there's a couch, as for an example. Maybe you can sit on the floor and put a blanket behind you, and then speak into the couch where there's cushions in front of you. It's going to be warm, like you mentioned. Recording in a closet in a wardrobe gets very hot very quickly, but the audio is going to sound crispier and cleaner and far more richer. It's going to give you those warm tones. You're not going to have any of that reverb and echoey hollow sound, which always makes it a little bit more tricky to listen and hear. Maybe it's a case of collecting egg cartons for a couple of months and having a bunch of those that you can stack. Or another thing that you must also realize, we don't have to do the entire room, right? If I've got a microphone and I can create a box that's as big as my microphone fits into it, and say I've taken a cardboard box, I can line that with more cardboard. I could line that maybe with some foam or some cushioning. I could put something maybe on top of it so that this is the space that I'm working with. I'm only working with a crate size space. And I speak into that with a microphone in that. You're winning, right? I don't even have to worry about the rest of the room as long as
Awesome.
where my voice is going into something that's cushioned. And I'll tell you this for free, and she speaks about it a lot too. True Crime South Africa is hosted by Nicole Engelbrecht, and she has won numerous awards across the continent for the work that she's done. She's been doing it for a very long time. She still, to this day, after 6 or 7 years, speaks into a cardboard box. That's how she records her podcasts. So what does that also say to you? It's the storytelling, it's the writing, it's making a human emotional connection. It's not about having a fancy studio to make that work, right? So yeah, there are lots of little things that you can do, but don't think of it as a big space that you have to fill. It's this right here in front of our microphone. How can I make this smaller and more cushioned? Yeah, you're a creative person. You can do it. I believe in you. Whoever you might be, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sean Lutz. So you guys have
Pleasure.
heard it, right? So please go
Yeah,
ahead to download the audio book, or the book,
yeah.
and actually read
Ebook.
through and get some ebook. Yeah, get the
Yeah.
ebook, and you'll see some of those points there. So
Mm.
Tico, take it away, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Richie. I mean, Sean, you are amazing. And this is not just coming from me. The chat is blazing. People are talking about, wow, thank you. This is so, I mean, helpful. Thank you, Sean.
Awesome.
So I also want to take a moment to say a big thank you to people who have joined and are listening from different parts of the continent. We've got Charles Kojo Van Dyke from Ghana. Thank you for joining. We've got the Zambaza podcasts
Awesome.
from all the way. Yeah, I think that's all the way from Texas right now, I believe. I saw that earlier. And a lot
Awesome.
of people from different parts of the continent, also in Nigeria, joining. Thank you so much. Just before we wrap up, I would also, I was hoping that we get one or two questions from the chat, but it seems we have just one person. And the question was from, or is from Prince Dan Wiesel, and he says, "What are the best noise reduction plugins for Makeshift Studio recordings?" I would assume that you've touched on that, but is there any new perspective or anything you want to add to that?
I think honestly, I can't think of any plugins off the top of my head. I mean, T-Code, maybe because you're far more of a studio engineer in your background, you might have a better answer to that question than I can. So by all means, if there's something you can think of, but I'm always like, the cleaner the audio, the better. Then we don't have to use the plugins.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly. For me personally, I think it's sad. It's not sad. It's fortunate for me because what I had to do before now, I used to use the Isotope RX. So
sure.
I worked with the RX 9. I know right now they're in RX 11, but I stopped at RX 9. And how? Why? I mean, RX is a very great plugin for anybody, especially when you're using Adobe Audition. But all of those
Mhm.
things are really technical. And what I just did for myself was I upgraded my studio equipment and also my studio space because
Mhm.
just as you have said, the better the audio, the less you have to,
Yeah.
use
Post
all of these
production.
plugins.
Yeah.
Because yes, this is my honest opinion. The more the plugins, the lesser the audio fidelity. It just takes something away. You're adding something, but it's taking some. That's just my personal perspective. So I
Sure.
send my audio as natural as it comes to because I ensure that I use, but for the sake of a makeshift, I think it really depends. There was a time that, especially when Adobe created the podcast audio
Yeah.
enhancer, I think that
Yeah.
was what it
Right.
was called back then. I used to use it, but I realized early that it was taking a lot of quality off my audio.
Mm.
The AI is trying to clean the audio, but at the same time, it's chopping off things you
Taking
don't
off
want it.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
It's
got so
stripping.
tired of it,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
just didn't want to use it anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I wish I had a definitive answer, but
Same here.
again, it comes back to it depends. But yeah, if we can get as clean audio as possible, then hopefully you won't have to use the plugins. So maybe some of the tips and even that ebook, downloading it from the APVA website and getting hold of that, maybe there's something in there that clicks as well. And you go, oh, I haven't tried that yet. Go ahead. It is free to download. Please, there's nothing free to download. Experiment. For me, creatives are people that experiment and they are out there to solve a problem in any way, shape, or form. So what did I say earlier? You can do it. I believe in you. You can do it. You can find a solution. So go out there and do it.
Yay! It's been a great evening, and I'm excited about this conversation. These are like kind of conversations that make me happy because we are literally solving problems for audio creatives across Africa, and this is something we all share in common, and that's why we're
Yeah.
here. That's why APVA exists, and that's why Sean Louis has been doing what he's been doing for many years, and he's not stopping. So I want to say a huge thank you to you, Sean. Thank you so much. It's been a very beautiful time. Richie, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it has been a really, really insightful session, and we've really learned a lot. I believe the viewers have actually learned a great deal, and they'll go out there and download the the ebook,
Good.
and I believe they are going to make use of it, and
Good.
they're going to give us feedbacks on what they
Terrific.
were able to learn from it. Thank you very much,
Terrific.
son. Thank you, thank
No,
you, thank you.
only a pleasure. Thanks again for the invitation. It's always good hanging out with you. Like we said, that ebook is then available on the APA website. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. You can find my website, which apparently T Code really likes. So you can also send me feedback and
Yeah,
tell me
he
whether
loves
you
it.
like it or not, by all means. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Well, that's it for today's edition of Pod Breaks Africa, an initiative by APVA, the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists, to not celebrate this time around, but to help answer issues or questions, talk about the things that concern audio creatives in the continent. And it's been a pleasure hosting Sean Louis, who is our first guest for this year's Podbreak Africa. If you follow us, we have more editions coming, so stick around so you can learn more. And it's also been a pleasure hosting this alongside Richie, who is a fellow podcaster and voiceover artist and works here with us at APVA. It's a pleasure working with you, Richie, again. And I
Thank
look
you
forward
very
to the
much.
next
Same
one.
here.
Yeah. And
Thank you
Sean,
very
who
much.
is you're welcome. And Sean, who is a veteran broadcaster, voiceover artist, podcaster. I
Extraordinaire.
envy you a lot. It's a
Always a
pleasure
good
having
time,
you.
boys. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much for listening. Go and make great audio quality. And we want to see you next year in the voiceover and all sorts of awards and functions and things. And happy Africa Podcast Day. I think I'm a week or so early, but we're nearly there, right?
Yeah.
Africa Podcast Day
Yes,
is
we
coming.
are.
So let me wish you in anticipation. All right. Have a
Yeah, for
great
those
weekend,
wondering,
guys. Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so
you very
much,
much.
Sean. And for those wondering, that's on the 12th of February, Africa
There we go.
Podcast Day. So, yeah, have a great time. My name is Tolu Kolade, aka T Code, and this is me from you saying have a good time and bye for now. Bye, everybody.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.
Thank you for listening to the episode. Become a member of APVA today. Visit apva.africa to learn more.